Hi, so Nick, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Nick Kovacevich. I'm the CEO of Kush Holdings.
Okay. And you wanted to talk about how is the latest state that has legalized marijuana, and it's sort of a political issue. Are you seeing it happening more in Democratic run states?
Absolutely. We are seeing, Democrats, Democrat-run states. I mean, they happen to be the larger, more populous states. They happen to, have been hit harder by COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a perfect blend here of, generally more politically, or a political side of the aisle that's generally more in favor of cannabis legalization, combined with an economic climate that's forcing that, and
Right.
also a call for social justice reform. And cannabis can help make a major impact on both of those fronts. So,
Mm-hmm.
as a result, we're seeing more traction there, and we expect to see more states come on board here. But we're also seeing it in Republican states too. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not just Democratic states, although you would expect for more of those to make traction quicker.
Okay. And what are the issues that you feel are very bipartisan about legalizing marijuana? I, I'm assuming one way you're saying is it's good for taxation, it's good for economic growth.
Yeah, I mean, look, jobs and U.S. jobs. I think both sides of the aisle would agree on that.
Mhm.
Cannabis is dollar for dollar a better economic impactor to the U.S. than any other industry. Why
Mhm.
is that? Because number one, it's a very high taxed item. And so it's one of the highest tax goods. And then number two, 100% of the goods are produced domestically. You don't see
Mhm.
that in other industries like alcohol, for example. You'll get tequila imported from Mexico, or vodka imported from Europe.
Mhm.
You don't have that with cannabis. 100% US grown. And so the jobs created to grow those products and to sell those products are therefore 100% US jobs.
Right.
So that's obviously a key incentive. Another reason, just I think both sides can certainly agree that adults should have freedom to
Mhm.
choose what they want. And it's not like cannabis isn't available. And I've told this to very prominent Republican leaders
Mhm.
in states that are draconian when it comes to cannabis. It's still available in your state.
Mhm.
It's just a black market product, right?
Mhm.
Illicit market product. And so, consumers should have a right to have product that's been tested for pesticides or harmful chemicals.
Mhm.
They should have the right to have clean product available through a safe outlet,
Mhm.
versus going to the street where it's dangerous and where you're in danger of getting something that's contaminated or harmful. And some states allow that right, and
Mhm.
other states don't. And so it's really, a personal freedom, personal right. I think if you come at it from that perspective, both sides of the aisle would be amenable.
Right. And I guess one argument would be then if you don't partake in this already, is it just one more legalization of something that could be dangerous because you have people on the road after using marijuana, you have it around your house that maybe it's easier for kids get their hands on.
Yeah, again, I would take the opposite approach in terms of kids.
Mhm.
We're a company that specializes in selling certified child-resistant packaging.
Oh.
So again, if products are available, yeah, on the street, I can guarantee you they're not in compliant packaging because it's more expensive, right? In our packaging that we sell to industry operators, and you see in the warehouse behind me, right? We're selling a lot of this stuff.
Mhm.
It's compliant, and it also comes with compliant labeling, right?
Mhm.
And labeling what something is, so that somebody doesn't accidentally ingest cannabis, whether, even if it's an adult, right? That's
Mhm.
important too. You're not going to get that with street product, but you are with legal, legitimate product. And we're actually seeing teen use is down.
Mhm.
Cannabis teen use is down only in states that have legalized and regulated, which of course makes sense because if you take the product off of the street and you put it behind an age-gated door,
Mhm.
youth can't get in and buy.
Right.
If they can go downtown and find a guy on the corner, he's not checking IDs, right?
Mhm.
They'll sell to anybody. So it's interesting that data is actually proving a lot of the arguments that the prohibitionists have made to be incorrect. Another one is driving under the influence. We just haven't seen data to support that there's more driving under the influence happening in states like Colorado and
Mhm.
Washington that have been legal now for 5 or 6 years. The data is just not there. So, and especially as we move into an age where there's more, services like Lyft and Uber that are available, when
Mhm.
we're on the verge of self-driving technology that's going to be coming here very rapidly, to use that as an excuse
Mhm.
to keep something that has been unfairly demonized and made illegal for so long,
Mhm.
it's just not resonating with the majority of the American voters, right? And we're seeing that in the data that the voters are supporting marijuana initiatives more
Mhm.
than they support virtually any other initiative that gets on the ballot.
Mhm.
So they're losing credibility with these older arguments that again aren't supported by the data and really aren't supported by the voters.
Right. And I think we grew up with that message, just say no to drugs, and marijuana was kind of like lumped in with stronger drugs and called the gateway drug. And now it's kind of a reversal. I mean, my governor is a physician, and it's almost being told to us that now it's healthy for you. I mean, do you think it's healthy, or is
Yeah.
it more recreational, or is it, a little bit of both?
Yeah, I mean, look, you bring up some good points. One of them being the fact that it's been marketed as a gateway drug. I mean, that also has been debunked because if you think about it, take any product, right? If you were going to go buy a sugar product
Mhm.
and, the person selling it to you was also selling cocaine and ecstasy and LSD and mushrooms,
Mhm.
that sugar product would then be a gateway drug, right? You're going
Mhm.
to go in, you're going to get sold on your product, and then you're going to get cross sold and upsold, right? Something I teach my sales team every day when it comes to packaging, cross selling. And
Mhm.
so you take that out of those channels and you put it into a regulated storefront. Again,
Mhm.
you eliminate the gateway drug effect.
Right.
And then your other point about stigmatization, it's funny that people are still, a lot of people still think, oh, well, yeah, hey, I'm using cannabis now, but don't say anything because they fear that there's this kind of judgment, whereas smart medical professionals are actually recognizing that, especially compared between alcohol, cannabis is the far safer alternative. And we're seeing that with the pandemic where
Mhm.
early on people were taking to wine and taking to alcohol and then realizing very quickly that that's just not sustainable, right?
Mhm.
You're hurting your body, you're waking up every morning with a hangover, and we see people switching to cannabis, and whether they're using it to have fun or to recover or to de-stress or to sleep,
Mhm.
they're waking up the next day feeling great. So if you just look at it from that standpoint, it's certainly can be argued that it's healthy. It can't be argued that it's not healthier than liquor, right?
Right.
Or tobacco or other
Mhm.
equivalents. And so people are figuring that out, and it's a good thing. Also, keep in mind there's other ways to consume cannabis. Most people think smoking. Well, yeah, of course, smoking anything into your lungs is not advised by medical professionals, but you can consume edible products, beverage products, transdermal patches, sublingual strips. I mean,
Mhm.
there's a wide variety of consumption. And again, it's all stuff that's been tested and certified. So, the actual effect of THC on the body, no studies have shown that is long-term detrimental, except some studies showing in developing brains in adolescents, which
Mhm.
again, nobody in our industry is advocating to make these products broadly available for anybody under the age of 21. So,
Mhm.
again, people are putting arguments out there that just don't have facts to support them. And I think it's good that smart people in this country are starting to figure it out and are starting to tell people otherwise.
Mhm. We'll talk a bit about the social justice aspect, because what I've seen is that um, well, 40% of all drug arrests are marijuana, and that affects people. And it seems that African Americans, other minorities, are getting arrested at a greater rate. They're getting prosecuted. They're ending up in prison. And of course, that affects people's whole lives. So I think part of the movement, first to decriminalize and then to legalize is because that we're starting to realize this is a society and we want to address that.
Yeah, you're 100% spot on. The social justice aspect is equally, if not greater, motivator than the economic aspect of legalizing cannabis and the personal freedom aspect. And we've had, this is another thing that's been highlighted here during the pandemic with first with the killing of George Floyd and then also with Breonna Taylor, and that one's interesting too because John Oliver just did a great segment on drug raids, which happen to be 60% of all raids are due to drug suspicion.
Right.
And we had a situation with Breonna Taylor where a no-knock warrant, they busted in and it turned deadly. That happens all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so you think about it, why are we even doing that? We're putting not only people, citizens' lives in danger, as we saw there, but also police. A lot of men in uniform are put in danger because they're asked to barge into somebody's home or somebody's residence with a warrant because somebody's suspecting drugs. I mean, is that really worth the cost that it brings? Arrests. Black people are 3 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana nationally. And you go to a state like Kentucky, and that number is as high as 10 times more likely, despite similar usage rates. And so, I think people have figured out that this war on drugs, and certainly when it comes to marijuana, is systemically racist. And we are disproportionately hurting people of color and Black people. And like you said, it then goes on their record. And so even if it is a minor thing, it's something that prevents them from getting employment. And if it's a felony, prevents them from voting and putting people in office that are going to create change. And so I think people are figuring this out and they're wanting change. And we're seeing governors step up and do it. The governor of Illinois has done a great job, Pritzker, of expunging records. We're seeing California do the same thing, and Governor Newsom has been a big advocate for legalizing cannabis. You're going to see more of that, and people want this done at the federal level, and that's what people are waiting for, and we're hopeful it'll happen under the Democratic leadership that we now have in office, but you're still going to have Republicans in the Senate try to block this major cannabis reform. And the arguments are getting silly at this point as to why you would want to do that.
I mean, do you think a lot of it's just an old-fashioned mindset? Republicans tend to have older voters. I hope it's not the fact that maybe it's institutionalized racism or not wanting to include people, especially people of color, to vote, to have that deterrent. I think that would be horrible, but
exactly, I agree. I mean, I hope that's not the case, but when you look at what arguments they can stand on outside of that, it's hard not to think that that is the case. And we know now that Republicans clearly want to make it harder for people to vote. And so you think of particularly Black people who tend to skew Democratic when it comes to voting. They're disproportionately being targeted for drug crimes and losing their right to vote. I don't know, you put the 2 and 2 together and you come to some pretty horrifying conclusions, but I'm not going to make those allegations. Let's say that it is just a draconian viewpoint, thinking that maybe marijuana is more harmful than it really is. And then again, that leads me to say, why are we not allowing more research, right? Research was severely restricted under Attorney General Jeff Sessions, also under Attorney General Bill Barr. So now that we have a new AG, we do expect research to open up. So if you're questioning this because of health, then you should be advocating for more research. And we just don't hear that coming from the majority of the Republican politicians. Now, I will say this, it also tends to be more of a generational thing. And you take people that are certainly far on the Republican side of the aisle, Congressman Matt Gaetz, who I happen to be friends with, and we have a great relationship. And he's on the right side of this cannabis issue. And when I talk to him, he is telling me that it's really more of a generational thing. And there are, in fact, a lot of younger Republican politicians that support cannabis reform. And they actually embrace the social equity side of this. Congressman Matt Gaetz was a part of getting the bill done in Florida that called for really strong social equity components to the licensing. So, we can't make blanket statements, and we can't put everybody into this bucket. And I think that, we'll see more and more Republicans, especially the younger Republicans, on the right side of this issue and pushing for things that you would normally associate with the Democratic Party. So that's great to see, and we need to see more of that.
Right. And as the generations get older and older, because it was the boomers who kind of were, the first ones to do this, I think, widespread. They were the hippie generation and, the rock and roll generation. So I think a lot of people are kind of used to this. Do you think there's any social benefits? Does if people replace drinking alcohol with, either smoking weed or edibles, however they want to partake, do you find that other things go down, like violence in society? Or is there really like a laid back lifestyle that goes with marijuana use?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot that comes with that. Number one, I mean, the taxpayer costs of, supporting medical problems caused by alcohol. We also know domestic violence is rampant with people that are, using alcohol, alcoholics, let's say, right? You don't see that with cannabis. You don't see chronic health issues that come from cannabis use. Maybe people are, a little overweight because they get the munchies, but generally you just don't see a lot of the same things. And we've heard anecdotally, police officers, for example, look the other way when it comes to cannabis consumption at large events like concerts, because they're like, hey, look, with alcohol, we see fights, we see violence. There's a lot of things. With cannabis, people chill out, and so we'd rather have them stoned and chilled during this event, and it makes our job easier, right? And so again, we need to look at more institutional data on these types of things, and that's been really frustrating, is people not wanting to at least learn and what the downstream effects are in society when we legalize. But like I said, the ship has sailed. Cannabis is available everywhere in the country, and there are other drugs that are like that too. And so my position is, if you're doing something for a long time, 50 years, for example, that's clearly not working, it's time to try something else. And so I don't know how anyone could argue with that. I mean, the war on drugs is not working. Number one, it's creating terrible situation here with people that are getting arrested and getting things on their record, and they're ruining their lives. It's tying up money in our system, policing in our jails. But number two, it's not preventing drugs. If it was actually preventing drugs, you could argue that it's working. So it's clearly not working. And this is something that's pushing people now to the other side, where not only are people wanting to legalize marijuana, they're thinking about legalizing other drugs. And we saw Oregon, the first state to decriminalize all drugs. It passed with flying colors. So the voters are ready for change. And that's what I think the politicians need to understand. Right. And of course, it takes the politicians 10 years to finally come around to what the voters want. But you would think in today's faster moving world, we wouldn't have to wait 10 years.
Right. And, it takes the criminal element out of it too, because if you want to buy, you can just go to a store and you don't have to meet with someone who could, be dangerous, be involved in gangs or anything like that. I see so many crime reports where it's focused on just, someone going to purchase weed. And then it becomes like a shootout, it becomes an arrest, it becomes a fight. So this seems like a very safe way.
Yep, I totally agree. And, people want safe access. And so we even see that in states where cannabis is legal. You have certain counties that, in cities where, honestly, the people in that jurisdiction voted to make it legal, yet they won't allow retail storefronts because it's this thing of not in my backyard, right? Well, again, now you're just forcing people to transact. They either have to drive really far to go to a legal outlet, or they have to transact illegally.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're defeating the purpose. So we're seeing that play out in California, where many jurisdictions still ban retail, even a few years into legalization here. And COVID is actually a big driver to change that. And we're seeing the largest city that still had a ban in place, Fresno,
Mm-hmm.
finally now allowing retail storefronts, which is great. And it's being driven mainly by the economic devastation that COVID has caused, and people wanting to recoup that through retail sales tax.
Mm-hmm.
But it happens at the local level. It's happening at the state level, and it's certainly still the case at the federal level. And we need to see progress on all three fronts.
Right. I definitely agree. Any money we could bring in during COVID, we're going to need, and we want to build back stronger and bring back the restaurants and everything that we had on main streets.
Yep. It's not going to be easy.
I'm assuming you have to wrap up soon.
Yeah, I have 5 more minutes before another call. So this has been great, though.
All right. It was great talking to you.
Yeah.
I appreciate you.
So you mentioned you might run some